For my birthday, I received a $100 Lowe's gift card from my girlfriend's parents, and I think that means they like me. Thank you, Steve and Ann. You probably didn't know you were funding this sort of project on YouTube, but here we are. It's hard to get out of Lowe's without spending at least $100, but at the same time, there's a lot you can get done with that small fortune. I considered staining the porch, installing voice-activated lighting, or just buying all the candy at the checkout. Finally, I settled on the most practical and sensible option. I would build a wooden boat for $100.
Soon may the wellerman come, bring us coffee, tea, and rum. One day the tonguing is done, take our leave and go. At a fair on the town, her hair was blonde and her dress was brown. Soon may the wellerman come around.
This may sound like a setup for YouTube, or you may be thinking, sure, you can build something that looks like a boat, but it's going to fall apart or begin to rot after a few times in the water. But I know from many previous builds using mainly lumberyard materials, it's entirely possible to build a very serviceable small boat for around $100. I've learned from many hours of testing the small craft I built, these materials can actually have a fairly lengthy service life. My 12-foot sail and oar skiff, built from common lumber and finished only with house paint, has stood up to a full year of hard weekly use and is still going strong. Generally speaking, a $100 budget will limit you to building an 8-foot dinghy or some sort of paddle craft, up to maybe 12 foot or so. I built an 8-foot pram this past summer and have experimented with other dinghies around that size. They have their place, but the sad truth is that any boat shorter than 12 foot usually is a wallowing pig to row or paddle and is slow under sail. So I decided to go with a 12-foot canoe or kayak type hull, and the design I came up with is a narrow beam, flat bottom, hard chine canoe. Basically a variation of the Cajun Pirogue. My solo Pirogue is designed for one person. It's paddled from a simple cross-beam seat near midship and can be propelled with a double-bladed paddle or a canoe paddle. It's also a lot of fun to sail, requiring no rudder or leeboard. Like the English duck punt, it steers with a paddle, and a hard bottom edge creates lateral resistance when sailing on the wind. I'm building mine completely open, but there ends up being enough plywood left after planking the bottom to add decks if you wanted to. The sides are formed from a pair of 1 by 10 by 12 pine boards, and the whole thing goes together with deck screws and PL construction adhesive. If you're interested in building one of my solo Pirogues, the complete plans are available on cumberlandrover.com, featuring step-by-step instructions and detailed drawings. This would make an excellent first-time build, and in my opinion, everyone needs some type of paddle craft like this. This video will demonstrate the general building process, but please keep in mind, I'm building this design for the very first time. You'll watch me complete the prototype, conduct testing, and then make alterations based on my water trials. My goal was to build the 12-foot Pirogue for as near $100 as possible. I figured I would probably exceed that at least somewhat, but I was determined to keep the project within that general price range. Even approaching the $200 mark would still be ridiculously little money to build any boat, but I expected to keep it well under that. I'm convinced that a Pirogue is the simplest type of boat to construct. The method is very similar to the flat-bottom skiffs and Sharpies I've built, minus a transom. Sideboards are sprung around a center mold and fastened to stems. The bottom is planked, then the boat is turned upright and fit with seats and ribs, and that's about it. I began by ripping the stem and stern pieces from an untreated Douglas fir 4x4 post. The stem and stern pieces are identical. The mold was a short length of leftover 1x8 with the ends cut at a slight angle to give the sides some flare. I chose to keep flare minimal to improve lateral resistance under sail and simplify construction. Increased flare would improve stability, but would also increase beam, thus resulting in a slower hull that is more difficult to paddle, and I'm trying to maximize efficiency with this build. After sawing stem and stern rake, the sideboards were fastened to the mold at their midpoint. It's important to get the mold secured and stable before beginning assembly. I have mine screwed to a long wooden frame known as a strong back, which is secured to my concrete shop floor with masonry screws. Due to relatively narrow beam, the curve of the sideboards is minimal. Compared to the skiffs I've built, bending the boards would be a piece of cake. I used a large clamp at each end and gradually tightened one then the other, alternating between the two. The sideboards bent very easily as expected, but there was a problem. The board you see on the right bent a little too easily. It turned out to be much more flexible than its counterpart, causing the hull to be very lopsided. You can't expect perfection when working with wood, but this was unacceptable. I had an idea. I didn't know if it would work, but it was worth a shot. I needed the boards to bend evenly. Stiffening the more flexible board would be much easier than making the stiff board flexible. I happened to have a 1x8 by 6 foot board laying around the shop. I took this board and screwed it to the outside of the problem board, thereby doubling its resistance to bending. At first it seemed like the board was now too stiff, but it ended up being just about right, resulting in an even curve on both sides of the hull. This piggyback board would be removed when the hull was complete. I expected it would hold its shape with the bottom on and seats installed. The sides were secured to the stem and stern with deck screws and PL construction adhesive. I pre-drilled all screw holes in an alternating pattern and countersunk them. Pre-drilling is not optional in boat building. There's no worse feeling than splitting a board because you're in too much of a hurry to drill a pilot hole. I planked the bottom with 1/4 inch exterior plywood. It's lighter than 3/8 and in my experience tends to have significantly less voids. Only a single sheet is needed. I laid it over the hull and traced the outline from beneath with a mechanical pencil for a fine line. Cutting just outside this line produces the big half of the bottom, covering 8 feet of length. The short bow piece was sawn out the same way from the remaining material. I found you get the best fit by leaving the edges a little fat and planing and sanding them flush with the sideboards. There was enough plywood left over for decks on both ends, but I prefer an open boat. So I set the plywood aside to build a tiny oyster skiff for my cats. What else would I do with it? With the hull turned upright, this was my first look at the new solo Pirogue. She was looking very boat-like indeed. The untrimmed stems kind of suggest a Nordic Iron Age situation. Don't worry, these will be cut flush. And then replaced with false outer stems for appearance. Once again, making the boat just slightly Viking-y, which is appropriate to my family heritage. I was on the phone with a mechanic yesterday, and he asked me to spell my last name, and the guy says, "Now, where are you from?" My family name originates from the far north of Germany / Denmark. It was contested at the time. Now it was time to install a butt block, joining the halves of the bottom. This was just a 1x6, cut to match the sweep of the hull, and screwed and glued in place. I always beveled the edge of my butt blocks just for appearance, and to make it easy to stow spars and paddles, and to reduce toe stubbing potential. I set cleats for seats at the desired height and position fore and aft. You may notice an issue with my setup here, and I will go on to correct this later in the testing phase. I think part of the reason I made a small error here has to do with the boat looking much bigger in the shop than it does on the water. Outer stems were built from the same 4x4 post as the inner stems. These are mainly for appearance, bringing the ends of the hull nearly to a point. But the bow piece also helps cut waves. You don't have to go to the trouble of making fancier stems like mine, a simple wedge will do. But if you want to be a Cajun Viking like me, leave those stems tall. The stern could be left flat, omitting the dress-up stem, but I wanted a true double-ender, so I made identical outer stems for the bow and the stern. I laid down several coats of my preferred cheap finish, Bullseye 123 primer. I've always used this stuff on the interior of my skiffs, but this is my first time painting the outside of a hull with it. It's non-toxic to me and the fish, and it provides some basic protection from the elements. But the best thing about Bullseye 123 is that it's only $30 a gallon or $15 a quart. I won't try and talk you out of giving your creation a real paint job or even sealing it with epoxy, but for me, boat building is more about the design than the finished product. However, very cheap water-based paints like this Bullseye 123 primer that's not even a paint can get you some surprising mileage out of a small boat like this. Just 4 days ago, I had swapped my $100 Lowe's gift card for a cartload of wood, fasteners, and glue. After 3 days building and 1 day painting, the solo Pirogue was ready to hit the water. Thus begins the testing and tuning phase. For those wondering about the budget, I ended up spending about $130 to complete the hull. There were a few minor components that I sourced from leftovers around the shop, like a short 1x8 for the mold. Regardless, you'd be hard-pressed to buy even a used kayak for that price. And a home-built wooden Pirogue is just a better boat if you ask me. It's definitely more stylish. So I've spent some time just paddling around, testing. I paddled sitting down in the bottom with a kayak paddle, paddled sitting on the seat, even standing up. And Performance, I'm pretty satisfied with it. It moves efficiently through the water. There's some inherent initial stability. I mean, I can stand up in the thing just fine, despite maximum beam only being 28 inches, which that's kind of touring kayak beam, I would think. My only complaint is tippiness. It's a little bit tippy sitting on the seat here, and I think really all I need to do is just drop the seat down maybe a couple inches at most. Overall, the Pirogue was a success. She was easy to paddle, didn't draw much water, and the hull was tight. But after a day of testing, it was clear that I needed to make a couple of alterations. Most importantly, the seat was placed too high and too far aft, resulting in reduced stability and poor trim. I had laid out the seats by eye, positioning them roughly the way most traditional Cajun Pirogues are set up. The problem was that my design is a little shorter and quite a bit narrower than most, which increases speed and efficiency, but reduces stability. The further aft you sit in a hull like this, the narrower the beam, and the less stable the boat becomes. The seat needed to be lower and more centered like a kayak or solo canoe. I moved the seat much closer to midship and lowered it about 3 inches. This centers my weight near the point of maximum beam, causing the boat to trim out flat and reduces the center of gravity. Both factors will increase stability. The second modification was strengthening the plywood bottom. Originally, I thought the narrow bottom may be rigid enough on its own over such a narrow span of beam. I didn't know for sure, but I wanted to give it a shot. During testing, flex was not excessive, but it turned out to be more than I cared for. So in addition to repositioning the seat, I also added a few simple ribs. The second round of testing was cold and wet, but my updates were a success. The Pirogue now sat just right on the water and felt twice as stable. As an unexpected benefit, the new seating position also allowed me to brace my feet against the forward seat like pegs in a kayak. This is much more comfortable and allows better use of core strength when paddling. Satisfied with her paddling capabilities, I was ready to fit out the solo Pirogue with sailing gear. I began by drilling a clearance hole for the mast in the forward seat, which I will now refer to as the mast partner. Then I installed the mast step with long screws driven through the bottom planking from beneath. The rig was to be a tiny leg of mutton, a simple triangular sail, usually sporting a sprit boom, which is a boom that overlaps the sail near its foot. I chose the leg of mutton because it's simple to make, convenient to use, and is more balanced than a four-sided sail, especially in this microscopic form. Another benefit is that the angled foot of the sail acts as a vang, which basically just means it keeps the sail from getting squirrely, and you don't want your sail getting squirrely in a 12-foot Pirogue. I sewed my own sail using material from an old jib salvaged from a large fiberglass sloop. I cut a flat triangle of the desired size and shape, finished luff, leech, and foot by double folding the cloth, and installed stainless spur grommets used to lace the luff to the mast and secure the boom to the clew. For me, the only cost to build my sail was using up a little thread and a few grommets, both materials I keep stocked to produce my handmade gear for sale on CumberlandRover.com. Please take a look at my pennants, waxed canvas totes, and haversacks, all handmade here in Benton, Kentucky. The average home builder can still make a sail of this type very affordably. If you sew, it may be worth buying real sailcloth, Dacron or nylon. This sail is so small, the cost of the fabric wouldn't be much. If you don't sew, the tried and true polytarp sail may be your best option. The edges can be finished by taping rather than stitching. You can even buy white polytarp online, which actually looks pretty dang decent. This was how I made my first kayak sails many years ago with polytarp. Recently, I've also experimented with canvas painter's drop cloths and I think this may be an option for a sail this small. Regardless of the material chosen, it is worth getting good spur grommets. I buy mine from Sailrite. Regular tarp grommets will work, but may not hold up that long. Now I had a sail, but no rig yet. I needed a mast and a boom. For a very small boat like this, there's no need to pay for spars, if you know where to get them for free. The great thing about pine, especially this species, is that it grows tall and straight. I'm just looking for standing dead saplings, and this cluster is so thick. There's a lot of little saplings that just get crowded out for sun and end up dying. So there's ones in here that are leaning over and off the ground that are dead, and there's ones that are still rooted that are dead. You could cut green ones and either just use them, although they're going to be heavy because they're full of water, or you could cut them and let them dry out for 6 months or a year. But for my purposes, I'm looking for such small spars that I'm just looking for standing dead wood out here. I'll show you what I've got in my little pile right here. It does take a little bit of work once you find a suitable pole, but not much. I'm probably not even gonna fully finish it out. I'm just gonna knock off any branches, shave off the bark, and step the mast and go. Drill some holes to run my lacing line or my halyard or downhaul or whatever needs to be fitted. I found a few good pine poles at my secret plantation, one of which will become the boom. But on the way out, I got lucky and happened to discover an unusually straight, standing dead cedar of the right height and thickness. I decided to make this cedar the mast. It was much stronger than any of the dead pine saplings, and cedar is valued for its excellent rot resistance. So I've got it cut to length. I just cut some of the base of the trunk off, and I've marked where I need to take the thickness down. So right there is about where it passes through the partner in the deck, and then that's where it ends up in the step. If you're wondering about that char on there, that is because I found this cedar in an area that kind of got caught in the edge of a controlled burn that's just done as sort of an environmental management procedure. So got a little bit of a burn, but that's not much. Once I get this thing trimmed down and sanded, you're not going to see any char. The base of the mast fits in the step now, and she is stepped. Just looks like a tree trunk coming out of the boat there. So now I just have to trim off those little branches and hit it with some sandpaper, drill a hole, install a cleat near the deck, and lace the sail on there and go sailing. That is showroom quality right there. So now I just have to drill a hole at the head, and that's where I begin my lacing and install a cleat at the bottom for the downhaul.
Seafarers, come listen to me. Way, hey, blow the man down. I'm a poor river sailor back from Tennessee. Give me some time to blow the man down. I'm a poor river sailor and a long ways from home. Way, hey, blow the man down. When you run out of porter, it's a long ways to row. Give me some time to blow the man down. No fish in the river, but the big-headed carp. Way, hey, blow the man down. They're no good to eat, for their bones are too sharp. Give me some time to blow the man down. I'm a poor river sailor from Kentucky way. Way, hey, blow the man down. I travel for free and with no bills to pay. Give me some time to blow the man down.
This pirogue is so similar to a canoe or kayak, yet so very different at the same time. It's a totally different kind of boat, and it's just fun. I'm having so much fun in this thing, especially with this tiny leg of mutton sail. It's surprising how little leeway you do make sailing upwind. You know, I mean, I've seen the duck punt sail like that, of course, in videos, but I expected it to make a lot more leeway than it actually does, and it does all right. It definitely sails close hauled, and it's a lot of fun downwind too. The boat was just about complete, but there was one last finishing touch. This Adirondack seat back, and it definitely makes the boat a lot more comfortable, as you'll know if you spent any amount of time in a traditional canoe. The back itself is made from a single cedar fence board, and the angle can be adjusted by tightening or slackening the stays and cleating off. Separate plans are available for the seat back on CumberlandRover.com. It can be adapted for use with any traditional seats, but will require some drilling. With around $130 in 4 days, I had created a practical, portable, and most of all, fun little boat. She was easy to paddle and stable enough to sail. I began this project as an experiment, like most of my builds, not knowing what to expect. I'm blown away by the finished product and the fact that it's possible to build such an attractive and capable boat for so little money, not to mention so quickly. Personally, I would rather paddle this $100 wooden pirogue that I built myself than any plastic equivalent of any price, and I'm dead serious about that. There's really no way to explain the joy of a little wooden boat to those who don't already get it. The best way to understand is just to build one for yourself. If you're interested in building a pirogue like mine, the plans are available for download on CumberlandRover.com as a PDF. I'm excited to share this design, and I'm not trying to get rich here. The plans are only $10. They contain all the information you need to build the boat, including detailed drawings and step-by-step instructions. They also include the sail plan and rigging diagram. The plans for the seat back are also available as a separate download. My solo pirogue is a very simple and affordable boat to build and makes an excellent introduction to boat building. It's also a very practical and fun little boat just to paddle around. I'm personally very excited about this design, and you will definitely be seeing more of my own pirogue on this channel. Keep in mind you get out of a build what you put into it. Please take a look at my plans on CumberlandRover.com.
black train is coming, fix your business right. Little black train is coming, maybe here tonight. Once she gets on rolling, ain't no way to slow. Ain't no time for packing, gotta get on board and go. She's steaming past the platform, burning up the tracks. Little black train is coming, ain't no turning back. The brakeman is a raven, the engineer a crow. I wake up in a cold sweat when I hear that whistle blow. Little black train is coming, fix your business right. Little black train is coming, maybe here tonight. Little black train is coming, fix your business right. Little black train is coming,